the beauty of the fly tying in general is you have that ability. You put a little extra lead on one, put some chain on one, you can put some hair on one, you can fish the same platform in 20 different ways.
Yeah, so just chatting. 20 years since modern streamers for trophy trout came out. You were working for Kelly.
Yeah.
And definitely on the bleeding edge.
Oh yeah, I remember rowing those two, him and Bob, down that river.
You can still find it. You can still find it if you want to see Russ in a teal Patagonia jacket.
Yeah, probably. Could be in the Smithsonian.
It could be.
In the Smithsonian.
But yeah, let's talk a little bit about that time, because I look at the last 10 years of what we've been doing down here with the bass, and that was the streamer era of that for trout.
It was.
So much cool stuff happened during that time.
I know
how much we've enjoyed being part of that part.
Absolutely.
Let's hear about... Give me a few chicken nuggets of those days and where it went from there. We know where it went, but let's
back in the beginning of it, it was just trying to solve a problem. I mean, any of these guys now that are really good, that put emphasis on their fly tying or different lines, et cetera, we really didn't have much. We had Kelly as a baseline, got us the flies that were bigger than what we were used to running. And when we tried to go really big, we didn't have the technology that we have now.
Right.
So we just had to simply, that was where the Circus Peanut came about, is just putting two flies together.
Right.
And,
TBF.
Yeah, right.
Two bugs, what? Right. Two buggers?
Yeah.
Two buggers.
Right. And, that's, we had the full sinking line, the old Kelly system with the 6 weights. And, we all know where lines came, that's through the outer orbit now. There's a million different ones, but back then all we had was a little bit of desire and some watching fish fall off, and that's really how the two hook jobby came around.
That's with the streamers, that when that was going down, I know where I was then. It was in high school. I was looking at the fly bins at my local fly shop in Northville, Michigan, with a black-nosed dace, a Mickey fin, a Matuka, maybe a Zonker,
right?
And then it was Zoo Cougar, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Why the streamer? Why did it go there? Was it we're not going to nymph a bunch of fish up in Michigan. Our dry fly season is short.
Right, and it's not consistent. So you have issues where you're basically, as a guide, you were sitting out there saying, well, we got to hatch it maybe at 9, 10, or maybe not. And what do you do? Kelly got the groundwork laid, the floating fly sinking line type bit, and it started moving from there. And when when I started working for the Kelly over at the Troutsman, it was that program. That's what we ran, and that's what he pushed. And he said, get off that salmon river, get off of go trout fishing. And make it work. And he was really one of the first guys that just pushed myself into that direction of, okay, get off the salmon river.
Right.
Get off the salmon river, go trout fishing, put in your hours.
Right.
And that's really what it can't come from. And those guys did put in the hours, and we put in the hours, and the tremendous developments that came across with both flies, fly lines, boats, everything. Yeah. It all stemmed from that.
Talk about the fly lines. I remember the first streamer fly line I bought was a teeny line. Right. And then Kelly came out with the full sink, which was at 60 feet or something. It was super short.
Right. That's what there was. We had two options. You had a teeny style line, which if you're in Michigan and you're running a teeny line and you're putting that thing on an 8-pole, you're probably not going to fare very well in that upper ensemble. Right. So what Kelly did was come up with this 60-foot jobby, that type 6, and you put it on a 6-weight rod, and that's a whole nother issue.
Right.
But, back in the day, it was like a 6-weight rod that somehow we conned a company into making a 6-weight that was like a fighting butt.
Yeah, with a fighting butt. Yeah.
And people don't realize that was a challenge.
Right.
You're trying to sell these ideas to these people that really could, really didn't have the foresight to think about where it was going to go.
Correct.
And that's, guys when you start putting your foot in that door and you start kicking that down, that's what really, that's when it started motioning.
Right.
Just everything that Kelly did, and then taking it to the next level, putting the 2-hook fly together, and right through Blaine stuff, with the multi shanks. I mean, we did not have that stuff years ago.
Right.
We had to work through it, and that's really what all this fly tying and fishing and rowing and all that stuff comes down to. Solving a problem because you're a fisherman first.
Right.
You want your guy, you want to get that extra 5 seconds to get that fish underneath the net. And that's, the 2 hooks together. That's where that came from. Just watching long shank flies and watching the fish spin off, and probably not being aggressive enough with fighting them, or,
right.
Things changed over time, but, initially it was just try to keep the fish on another couple seconds to land the thing.
Right. And then you touched on it, but we were sinking lines, we were maxima leaders, we were floating flies.
Right.
Peanut.
Yeah. Jig right? Flies, yeah.
Bottom contact.
Yeah, cut the column a little bit, get down to that next level, and a lot of places in the country, where it's consistent temperatures. We don't have that here, as you know too. I mean, there's times of year where that water's only not frozen because it's moving,
right?
And there's times where that stuff's 80 degrees,
right?
So you have to have, something that I think that, with the hair flies and the lead flies now, the variety that we have now, but the lead really helped during those shoulder times of year. I'll call them shoulder times of year.
You extended your
right.
season.
You extended your season. They extended the regulations in the state, and it was all right around that same time where, okay, now we're catching fish in 37, 38 degree water. We're catching fish in 36 degree water.
Right.
And we're not catching them on the floating flies.
Correct.
We need to slow down that presentation, and
hold the zone.
It took a lot of, exactly. Took a little bit of work on it, but, over the course of 20 years, pretty close to now, we pretty much are getting to that point where it's time to move again. You know?
Always time to move.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about the evolution of the peanut, because I think most of the people out there that say, let's rewind 20 years and maybe got exposed to this 2003, 4, 5-ish.
Right.
They're going to find that in their pack fly catalog.
Right.
It looks similar to this, but it wasn't this. But this is kind of where, most of the people that were into streamer fishing started. It was an Estes body, marabou, flash, rubber legs, a rubber leg delivery system, as you say.
Yeah.
As effective for bass as it is for trout.
Sure.
And then the evolution of the fly.
Yeah,
Talk a little bit about it.
Really, we're fortunate now, because back in the day we only had basic, streamer hooks.
Right.
That alone, it was a big deal too. And once they came up with a short shank, wider gap hook, it was like, oh, great.
Right.
That was another big thing too. But starting off with just that lead, trying to cut that water, and pretty basic design, and to try to sell the concept of 2 flies to a company was pretty tricky.
Right.
They didn't want to double their production cost.
Right.
No one will ever pay $5 for a fly.
Never.
I was told that.
Right.
Actually told that. No one will ever pay $5 for a fly. It's never going to happen.
Right.
The streamer thing's it's just the Midwest. It's just Kelly. You're just spawning off of Kelly, and, you got the customers that are streamer angling. No, it's everywhere in the country,
right.
And it's not just trout.
Yeah.
It's bass, it's pike, it's anything that swims people are fishing for now.
Do you remember the first night that you connected the two together? Because some of the patterns that I have tied, I'm like, I remember the first.
Yeah,
or I even have some of them. Do you remember?
I just remember I did a root beer one first.
Okay.
It's still, I think, probably one of them catalogs somewhere. But I did a root beer one with an olive tail with some copper on it. Mm-hmm. And I went to the Pure Marquette. It was the first river I believe I fished that thing.
Okay.
And pulled down, and I got below M37 bridge, and I lopped something up against a wood pile, and I got a nice trout. And I was like, pull the boat over, I'm getting a camera. And all we had was those little clicker slider
waterproof.
Yeah, like the one
rubber band
where it looked like 2 little red dots on a hill with a fish. You never know what you got. And I was
did you run to Myers and Big Rapids for that?
No,
$10.
We went to I forgot my rain jacket place, up on the lodge there, right?
Yeah.
So we were total tourists, but and it was just right from that moment, that water was just up. It was a perfect spring day. It was like people were steelhead fishing all around everywhere, right. And cold water, copper fly.
Yeah.
Boom. And it was like that light just went on, and I said, oh man, this is something. And we weren't losing any. We were getting them. They were positive on the fly. It was like a 3-incher, compared to like what we had before was like on a number 2 hook. Right. That was an effective fly. Then we said, oh, we'll cheat and we'll try to tie him on the Kerry Stevens hook. And that failed. So then we did the two hooks together, and it was about 3.5 inches. I think it was like a 93, 95 or one of the Daiichi old school 1710s. But there were, there was a few companies that made them. We just latched 2 together, and to get to that fly. Now I look back and I think it's hilarious, but to try to sell the idea to a company, they're like, put less on it, put less on it, put less on it,
And that's still true to this day.
Right.
You're never going to get the fly that you tied that you sent to them.
No, of course not.
One of these days, someone's going to do it.
Yeah, you never know.
I hope it happens.
It could.
I really do.
You know that really as much as anybody. But yeah, back in those days, it was just that moment that it happened. It's like, oh yeah, we got something.
Right.
I remember who I was fishing with. He goes, you got this figured out. I'm like, I don't know if I got it figured out, but this fly's certainly working.
Right.
At least you got to start somewhere.
So we had the nut. We had the Kraken.
Yeah, I did like 3 or 4 tandem ones. You're right.
Yeah.
Did one that was a bunny version, which was basically like something a guy would use in Alaska.
Right.
Just did a two hook jobby. And the Kraken was a number 2 fly for many, many. Actually, still one of my favorites.
Right.
And then I started putting some rubber legs in there, but the pattern basically remained a bunny fly and another bunny fly.
Right.
And now with some additions to it.
And I had a really good run back in the day on the Mad Pup.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one. That was a Sadati-inspired fly from saltwater.
Okay.
Because he had one that was like, I'm going to tie a baby rainbow, and it looked like a great profile on a big saltwater hook. And we say, well, it's a great lamprey.
Right.
It's a great, little bunny fly. Mm-hmm. And that one worked really good, too, for many, many years.
Yeah.
And then it went from that to like the Southbound and some other ones, spin-offs of that fly. Mm-hmm. Where it was kind of a tandem version.
The pup needs to come back. I liked the pup.
That was a good fly.
I caught my first steelhead on the strip was on the pup.
Yeah.
White head, black rear end.
Yeah.
6-weight fighting butt.
Right. That's like the OG program right there. That's what we had.
Hell yeah, dude.
For years that was it. You ran that type 6 and 60-footer Kelly line and some fighting butt 6-weight. That is really brings back some memories. It's funny that I still have some of that gear. I like to have it. Probably go into the Smithsonian someday.
Let's talk
along with my coat.
People may have heard you talk about colors. The way you break it down, it makes a lot of sense, right? It's pretty simple. But just touch on that because it's simple, but it's genius.
Right. I mean, so when you go, anywhere, it doesn't matter what river you're in the country, you can always catch a fish if that fly, whatever it may be, is going to match that bottom because that's what fish are doing. They don't want to stand out. And you'll have your days on white and you'll have your days on black. And you could always go opposite ends of the spectrum, I call it. But if you want to day in, day out catch fish that are meant to blend with that river, match that bottom. Match the bottom. I think it's absolutely my number one way to catch fish. I mean, if you got a river that's mainly sand, then run a tan fly. You got something that's a little tannic, maybe add some copper to it or gold. Olive River, my river is olive, man. I'll tell you right now, that Manistee is an olive river.
Right.
So, 9 times out of 10, I go to that river and I better have some shade of olive there. And, just everything in nature is going to match that. So it's, and if you can't see your fly, you can add trackers to it. Right. I know, whether it be a brighter color rubber leg or, little flicker tail off the, I used to do a lot of them where there was 2-tone tails where I would have a little yellow off my peanut or, different color leg, just something you can track for your mind because if you get a really good fly, you're probably not going to see it in those low light periods when they're all biting.
You're saying like when your guy's in the front telling you a story looking back, that's not the right way to do it?
No, probably not. But, a lot of times they get bit.
Right.
And I'm like, oh yeah, see, I realize that fish might be terrified of movement now. You could actually be like, wow, there's 40 guys behind me throwing the same fly. You know, maybe I should run something a little different. Maybe I'll blend the bottom or make a little bit smaller fly or fish lead.
Right.
You know, I know it's like a lost thing, but lead's not dead.
Lead's not dead.
Lead's not dead.
Lead's not dead.
You know, it's really not. Like, you know, a lot of people might think it is, but, you know, with the color thing and with the, you know, flies in general, I think it's just a huge disservice to streamer fishing in general to go out there with one action fly. Right. I'm going to tell you right now, anybody who's out there listening, it is a huge mistake. You got to have multiple actions. If you go to a place and all of a sudden the water's not on, boy, and you don't have some kind of lighter fly, hair or chain or something, you'll be in trouble. Likewise, the other way around. You go to a river and it rained for a week and you got 5 foot extra water and you don't have lead. You know, that's a mistake, and it's a huge fly tying mistake. And a fishing and all of it, you got to have multiple actions.
And multiple weights.
Multiple weights. And even the same fly, the same rods. You know, that's the beauty of the fly tying in general, is you have that ability. You put a little extra lead on one, put some chain on one, you can put some hair on one, you can fish the same platform in 20 different ways, right. And you can match that bottom. One thing, match the bottom. 2, fish different actions. And nowadays, different lines.